We're here on a beautiful rainy spring day and we've got a great agenda in front of us with some decisions, and before we do that I will open over to our kaumātua Tāmei to open us up. Kia ora Tāmei. Thank you.
E ke mi hea ngā kaupapa hei āwhina I te hāpori, hei āwhina I te mana whenua hoki, e tēnei te mihi atu kia koe te whaia, tō mātou kaumātua wairere, e weramu koutou mā, me te kaupapa kei te whakatakoto I mua I te aro te tangata. Ko kāre au e tāi te ki, ko huri te hiko I rungi ngā taringa, waiho mā āwhi nei kaki te painga. Muna tēnei te mihi atu kia koe. Okay. E te atua kahara wa koe nei mata e whakairi ngā ki te kōrero, ki te taumata, ki te tāhuhu, kia horo ta marino, kia horo te aroha I rungi I o mātou e hui tahi nei, mō tō tātou tāone rangatira o kirikiri roa ara, te riu o Waikato. Tēnei mātou e mihi atu kia koe, kia pāmai tō ringa aroha, ki rungi te kingi, e tui I rungi I te mana motu hake ngā kuku, I whakatakoto I te koronei ana ko taha kenei. Ngā kuku mana kei roto. Koe nei hei whakaro ngā tātou te tangata hoki. Nō reira ki te honga ko whetu rangitia, tai atu ki taku mārei kura Sandy, hoki atu koutou I rungi te aroa, ki Hawaii nui, Hawaii roa, Hawaii pāmama. Moi mai ruti tariki. Tātou e pai nei te hāpori, I whakai, kāre I whakai rāne ki te kaupapa ka whakatakoto, kei tēnā hono whakaro. Tēnei mātou o te wapa o tainu I mihi nei ki a koutou, te whare o te kingi, I mihi ana ki a koutou. Weramu, tēnei hoki te mihi o te kuia mai kaito tehe, I hara mai ki te noho ki konei, ki te tūhono ngā whakapapa. E hono mā ki taupiri maunga koutou o waine. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, pai mārire, āmene kia.
Kia ora Tāmei, thank you very much, and I'd also like to acknowledge former Mayor Julie Hardacre in the audience with us today, and former Deputy Mayor, who I've always called for years, former Deputy Worshipfulness, Gordon Chesterman. It's a bit of a standing joke. And very warm welcome to Ngāti Wairere this morning. Thank you for joining us. Right, let's move on. Committee members, you have the run sheet in front of you. We have apologies from Mayor Southgate, who was on council business today. As most of us know, the Prime Minister is in our beautiful city. I have apologies from Councillor Huaki and Councillor Mark Donovan for lateness. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Taylor has already jinxed our meeting by saying it should be a quick one, shouldn't it, Angela? Yeah. So with that, I will move that the apologies be received, seconded by Councillor Van Austen. All those in favour say aye. There are none against. It's carried, and we have we have Councillor Donovan on Zoom, do we? Yes. All right. Great, thank you. Confirmation of the agenda with the leave of the committee. We're going to, on your run sheet, speaker number 4, Wiramu Puki, we're going to have Wiramu present as the applicant actually before the item rather than constrained in the public forum. So I'm sure the committee will support me on that. So with that, I will confirm that the agenda be received as is in front of you. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour say aye. There are none opposed. That's carried. Declarations of interest. Councillor Wilson, did you want to register interest?
Just, it's part of the PX portion of the agenda today, just in regards to the district licensing.
Yes, great. So he's just registering an interest, not a conflict. Thank you, Councillor. Do we have to move that? We don't move that, do we? No. All right. Let's move straight on to the public forum. Just before I call our first speaker up today, we've got a number of motions and amendments for the few items that are on here today, and I just want to thank committee members for sending those through to me so that I had an early heads up and that governance had an early heads up as well. It makes our job much easier, and thank you. You're obviously extremely engaged in today's items. Right, so our first speaker is Laura Callaway. Laura is well known to many of us around the table, and Laura is speaking on item 8, the Sonning Car Park application to change name. Is she here? Actually, I didn't see her. No, she's not here. All right. Let's go to Neil, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to say that. Kurgenvin? Kurgenvin. Welcome. Neil, committee members, Neil is speaking to item 8, Sonning, and he's the president of the Waikato Historical Society. Good morning, Neil,
Good morning.
and welcome.
Thank you.
Have you spoken with us before? There's a wee timer
Yes.
here. You have, so you know the drill.
Yes.
Great, all right, thank you. So we're in your hands when you're ready.
It's got 2 hours and 5 minutes or something. Isn't it? Oh, 5.
Sure, as long as you brought morning tea.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Good morning, all. I am Neil Kurgenvin, the president of the Waikato Historical Society. The Waikato Historical Society has been around since 1954 and contributed to the recognition of the history of Hamilton for many years. As indicated in our letter of support, the Waikato Historical Society encourages the Hamilton City Council to acknowledge the history and past of our past and recognise this small area of land for what it is called and what it was, Opaiapa. There are frequent references to Council's ownership of this land and lack of obligation to give it up within the very large report that you have had prepared by staff. There are several wish list proposals for what it could become if the Council retained ownership and find a partner to the development. Is this really a core Council responsibility? I could not see in the staff report any thoughts or ideas as to what could be recognised on the site if it was returned to its original owners. I understand their intentions are to acknowledge its past, and would it not be great to have a thing like this in the centre of Hamilton City, once dominated by the descendants of those making the applications, where it could be established as a memorial for some of the injustices that they have suffered? One may ask, what is in a name? The name Opaiapa Park reflects the recognised history of the site, the ownership by Ngāti Wairere before the 1864 confiscation. In this situation, it would be an honest showing of respect to our history. The Waikato Historical Society supports the name change. Thank you.
Very good at this, well done. Are there any questions from members? There are none. Oh, there is one. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I think I've heard you say not only are you supporting the name change, but are you suggesting that the land that is owned by the ratepayers is gifted? Are you suggesting we should gift the land?
It was. I have read through the report, and I acknowledge where you're coming from, and the fact that yes, you own it, and yes, it would be a decent thing to give it back to them.
So,
give it back to them. Gift it back to them.
And as a ratepayer,
Yep.
You're comfortable and you believe your society are giving you the approval to say today that the council should forgo the 8 million odd in value.
This presentation has been passed through the committee of the Waikato Historical Society. I speak on their behalf, yes.
Including selling and gifting the land.
The intention of the future of use of the park, yes.
Thank you for your submission to us today, Neil. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Laura hasn't come in, has she? No. All right, our next speaker is former Deputy Mayor of Hamilton City, Gordon Chesterman. You're very familiar with this process, I dare say, Gordon?
Morena Acting Mayor Angela, councillors and CEO Lance. I'm Gordon Chesterman, Chair of Guardians of Clawlands. Te Ngāti Wairere, mana whenua, tēnā koutou katoa. Today the late Dr Hari Puki, Ngāti Wairere kaumātua and Waikato Tainui leader and former kaumatua to Hamilton City Council, is watching over us, as Wiremu will later talk about the significance of Apoia Pā. But down to the business of this public forum, Angela and councillors, the Guardians urge you to accept staff recommendation option 1 to change the name of Sonning Car Park to Apoia Pā now. There is no compelling reason to wait. Take a moment to consider a copy of the Treaty of Waitangi, which I understand is displayed in this chamber, and what it means. It's New Zealand's founding document and deserves better than lip service. Apoia Pā has direct links to the signing of the English version of the Treaty of Waitangi in Port Waikato in 1840 by its chief Wiremu Pokawa. There is no other direct historical Hamilton link to the treaty as powerful as this sacred site. Yet some want it obliterated from our memories, buried under tons of concrete with a ridiculous intensification experiment on a site with significant challenges, including recent bank instability we reported to the CEO and the Mayor. 25 trains a day passing by and likely more, and over 18,000 vehicles travelling along River Road. There are no valid reasons to continuing honouring an insignificant little village in Berkshire, England. Sonning is a name that moved over to Frankton at the Girls' High boarding facility, and further north along River Road at Diocesan School for Girls. I'm asking you to deal with staff's recommendation in 2 ways. First, vote today for option 1 to change the name. Second, reject staff's recommendations to delay implementing the name change because of what might or might not happen in the future, and adding in Jasmine Park as a smokescreen. Ngāti Wairere has already waited over 160 years to reconnect to the site confiscated by the Crown. Agree the name change today, and your decision will inform what happens in the future. There is no risk ahead, as staff suggests. Developers know the site is registered for protection in the city's district plan and by Heritage New Zealand, and understand the implications of this. Meanwhile, the site can continue as it is with its name changed. Show respect, talk with Ngāti Wairere as mana whenua, and agree together how the future might look beyond the name change. As guardian of Claudelands, we wouldn't mind being asked as well. We are the neighbours. Thank you.
Right, we'll have 1 question each from Councillor Wilson and then followed by Councillor Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Just reading back through some historical documents when you were on council, am I correct in saying that at that time you were part of the council that was comfortable in putting this land up for sale?
Thank you for asking that question, Councillor Wilson, because there is a compelling argument. When Mayor Julie asked me to put together a brochure promoting 5 or 6 available city council sites, all of us were excited about the opportunity of marketing these properties, including Sonning Car Park. But I'm now very, very angry that staff did not in any of those reports say, but hold on, did you know it's a designated historic pā? You could say, yes, I should have known that, I didn't. And in my time on council, there were many times when I didn't know what questions to ask. So I think that staff pulled the wool over our eyes and allowed us to go into the environment thinking there were no impediments. I am still very angry today over staff not doing what is right by councillors. Give us all of the information.
You know we've got a formal politician in the public forum seat when they use an answer to debate. Councillor Taylor, we've run out of time, but I'll allow your question.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I'll be quick. Gordon, thanks for your submission. Always great to see you. Can I just clarify, for you, is the upshot of this name change would be no development on the site? Is that right? No opportunity to sell it, to work with a developer, to do something else?
I think it's quite wrong for me to try and override what Ngāti Wairere's view of it is. But my understanding in talking with Wiremu, there would be no hesitation in allowing the site to be developed in several ways, including as a commemorative treaty space, green space, and also having car spaces, because over the years car parking has been stripped out of the inner city, and these car parks remain very valuable to commuters. And I'm sure if you ask a Wiremu Puki the same question, he will tell you they are more than happy to sit down and talk.
Thanks, Chair.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's good to
Thank
see
you,
you in the
Councillor.
chamber
Thank you,
again. No, Laura? No? Okay. So our next speaker is Priya Kurian. Where is she? Morena Priya, it's nice to see you. And committee members Priya are speaking to item 9, the electoral decision for the 2025 election.
Tēnā koutou Deputy Mayor Angela O'Leary and councillors. So my name is Priya Kurian. I'm Professor of Political Science here at the University of Waikato. And as a political scientist with a deep interest in democratic politics and public engagement, I believe that you made the right decision to move to STV for the 2022 election. And I said at your meeting in 2020, there is overwhelming evidence to support such a switch. So I believe that your decision then demonstrated your real commitment to making the electoral system more democratic and more representative. Now, I've seen the voter turnout figures for 2022, and I understand your concern, or at least a concern perhaps among some, that somehow the fall in voter turnout in Hamilton was caused by switching the electoral system to the STV system. But I believe it is absolutely essential for you to understand that voter turnout has actually dropped across a large number of councils, including those that use FPP, the first past the post. So it would be extremely unwise to assume a causal link between the use of STV and a turnout with the snapshot that you have before you today. In fact, over time, STV councils have tended to avoid a decline in turnout compared to the overall average. But again, no research can establish yet a causal link between the two. So what can we say from this? The reality, and I think this is really the issue that we are all concerned about, voter turnout, and voter turnout is impacted by a great number of factors, a range of factors. First of all, it does take electoral systems time to bed in. So a hasty decision at this point would be not giving the system a chance. But also we know that there are other factors. For example, I think there is broad agreement, not just among political scientists, but across New Zealand, perhaps, I mean, in terms of broader society, that New Zealand will benefit from civics education, right? We have to have an education of the public about how political systems work, and this happens both through school and outside of it. We know that people in neighborhoods which have higher deprivation are less likely to vote. And in contrast, people who are homeowners are more likely to vote. So if we really want to improve voter turnout, we have a number of options, but for instance, we can identify neighborhoods with really low voter turnout, make contact with local groups and schools, and establish relationships. Now that calls for a longer-term strategy, but this is what is needed, right? We need to make voting real and important for people. It's also important to make voting easier for people. So could we have non-postal drop-off boxes and take voting to where the voters are rather than expect them to show up somewhere. I mean, that's something to consider. So overall, I would suggest that it's misleading and maybe even incorrect to suggest that STV caused the decline simply on the basis of the numbers that you have. Now, STV is not a magic solution, but I know that when we look at councils that have been using STV for a much longer period of time, that it has actually boosted women's turnout. It has shown improvements for Maori representation. Now, finally, I think there's a question before you whether to have a poll of voters to see what voter preference might be on this issue. This might, again, and I think I said this back in 2020 as well, that it might seem like a way of going to the people to ask what they want, but a number of studies find that one-off polls rarely serve a democratic purpose. It looks like a good option in many ways, instinctively, but in fact, whether it is in terms of who votes, how much time is given to help people understand the details, or doing it in a context where political practices have been long embedded. For example, Switzerland, where voters, the public, know how referendum, for instance, work really well. We end up with the likelihood of a vote that is not necessarily likely to enhance the democratic legitimacy of the decision. So I would like to urge you to retain STV as the electoral system for Hamilton. STV is more democratic, fewer votes are wasted, and it reflects the preference of the entire voting public. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Apologies for mispronouncing your name. I wasn't reading it correctly. I know who you are. Priya, we'll have time for one question from Councillor Wilson.
One question with 4 limbs.
No?
I'm trying to create one meaningful question. What sort of barrier do you believe is created when there is an inconsistency in voting processes of 2 votes occurring at the same time? So we know that, in fact, at this election, there was a STV and a first past the post. Is there any research that explains or has investigated the dangers of that?
I can't cite studies, but there's absolutely a case to be made that having one system is good. So if you can have STV, for example, across the board, that is less likely, perhaps, to be a barrier. But on the other hand, I think what you have in Hamilton, in the context of Hamilton specifically, I mean, we have historically, when we had district health board elections, that was STV, and then we were doing FPP for local. So we're not starting with a blank slate as such. We have a voting public that's been used to handling 2 different systems. The more we can move towards proportional representation, and it is more likely to reflect the will of the voting public.
Although they were separate documents. On this most recent, it was the same document, depending which way you turned it.
Right. And obviously there's not been enough research specifically on that.
I had a number of other questions, but I'm stymied by
Yes,
the
you
role
are.
of the chair.
Thank you very much, Priya, for taking the time to speak with us this morning. Kia ora, thank you. All right, Council, let's move on. We've move on to item 5, the confirmation of the Council open minutes of 2nd of August 2023. Are there any issues arising? Did I say 3rd of August? Yep. From the minutes, I can. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Donovan. Thank you. All those in favour? There are none against. That's carried, thank you. And may I just welcome member for Hamilton East, Tama Pōtaka, who is also in the audience. Kia ora, Tama. Did I say East? That's terrible, given I'm a Westie. Welcome. Right, item 6, confirmation of the elected member open briefing notes of 2nd of August 2023. I'll move that those are a true and accurate record. Councillor Van Austen seconds. All those in favour say aye. There are none opposed. That's carried. Right. Chair's report, item 7 on page 13. There's one recommendation there. I'll speak to that very briefly. And Mayor Southgate has given me a few notes just as a verbal update. She wants to acknowledge the conclusion, obviously, of the FIFA World Cup hosting and thank all of the elected members around the table for your contributions, and our newly minted sports ambassador, Councillor Donovan, who has charged into that role with much enthusiasm, and possibly to Councillor Tawariki's disgust in terms of your position on league, or what is it? Australian League, something. I don't know. I'm not interested. Right. Yeah, something. Up the wires? Yeah, all right. Mayor Southgate says that Hamilton as a city should feel very, very proud of its role and how we hosted the recent Women's World Cup. A couple of fun facts here. We hosted 5 group stage matches, attracting crowds of just under 60,000 at the stadium, so go us. There were 8,000 attendees, 240 individual performers, and 42 hours of free entertainment at the FIFA Fan Festival at Glowbox Arena, Claudelands. So, and I know many of you went to that, so that's fantastic as well. In October, November, she says we should have a better sense of the number of tourists and revenue that this recent event brought to our city. So a big congratulations to everyone involved in making that a success, and our immense appreciation to the staff involved as well. Mayor Paula last week attended the National Council meeting in Wellington, and as she always does, she will circulate notes in the coming days to us, and she will again be in Wellington on Friday to attend the Resource Management Reform Local Government Steering Group meeting. How's that? As we know, the Prime Minister is visiting our city at the moment, and he is meeting with key community leaders, working with youth in the city, and also will be visiting the Council CCTV Crime Operations Centre. I think all our you're not so new councillors anymore, you've been in the seat for almost a year, have been to our CCTV Operations Centre. It's pretty impressive. And then last update from Mayor Southgate, Council has been invited to nominate a representative, and this is the recommendation in front of us, to the Waikato Regional Council Waikato Scheme Subcommittee, and we are very pleased to put forward Councillor Van Austen for this role. Now, for those of you who don't know, it's been renamed. It used to be called the Catchment Committee. Mayor Southgate and myself have served on it in previous years, and I think the Chair of Finance, Van Austen, is a great pick because it's all about money, as well as obviously catchment and stormwater and those really pressing issues along our awa. So thank you for accepting that position, Councillor. You'll be a great addition and representation of our city. That's a verbal update, so there's probably no comments. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. You don't need to debate on that, I'm sure. No? Good. Like how I'm stymieing that today. We're cracking on. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's raise our hands. All those in favour? There are none against. That's carried. Okie dokie. Item 8. So we're going to have Nicholas Wells and Blair Bocock come up in the chair. And then we will start with Wiramu. Wiramu, we're in your hands if you would like to come up as the applicant. When you're ready.
E mihi kaula ki a koe e te tiamana. Me ngā kōpiti whakahaere o te kaurihero kirikiri roa. E mihi atu ki a koe e te pāpā, he tabe tō karakia e tēnei ata. Ngā karakia maumahara ia te atua ki runga rawa. Me te tātou ki ingi po te tau te whero te tua whetu, me te whare kāhui ariki ki roto e tēnei ata. Lo reira tēnā koutou.
Kia ora.
How much time do we have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, well, I'll be as concise as possible. So basically, we are going with the recommendation, the first recommendation. We don't support the staff's recommendation at all. So our preference is to go with option 1. So I just want to put that out there right now. And as you know, the history of Opoia Pa is directly linked to Paukawa. In fact, his direct descendant was the late Mana Martin. And Uncle Mana actually had in his possession this chief's mere. And so in 2014, I was in London at the British Museum and I found Paukawa's ear pendant in the collection. And now we're looking at a repatriation case to have that ear pendant returned here to the city. And at an appointed time, hopefully to have the mere, Paukawa's mere on display. And I think the invaluable opportunity here, because all the major cities have a historical treaty context. Ngāti Whātua acknowledged the signing of the treaty at Okahu Bay. Yet our city doesn't have that yet. But for the first time, we now have that history that has been put in the reports. And I assume that all the councillors have actually read the background to that history as well. So just to support many of the sentiments that our former Deputy Mayor Gordon Chesterman has raised, I guess we have waited over 160 years, to reconnect with Opoia Pa. And also, too, is that it is the only direct link as a city we have with the treaty through that particular chief who signed the English translation of the treaty. It would be very interesting to get a transcript on the Māori content of that translation, but I mean, I don't have the time to do that kind of level of research. Also, too, is that we actually really encourage the council to come out to Hukanui Marae to have a hui with the hapu. It's not just about me. I just want to make it very clear. It's not about Wiremu Puke. It's about Ngāti Wairere. And I'd like to really commend Councillor Moko Tauariki for bringing our mayor out to our Pokai. I was involved in a High Court case for foreshore seabed claim during our time in Pokai in the far north. Trying to deal with Ngāpuhi is a very interesting experience. So just getting right down to I do have an idea, an option that I'd like the council to consider. Is there an opportunity to look at the Founders Theatre site as an alternative? Because you have the infrastructure there, you have the access to the CBD and to the schools. So it makes perfect sense to use the Founders Theatre site as an alternative option to provide for the intensity housing opportunity, because you already got housing there already. So I just thought as a solution to council to consider that maybe that's an option that may need to be explored. So also too is that I want to answer Councillor Ewan Wilson's question about gifting land. We have found under the Official Information Act that following the 1989 Court of Appeal with the Tainui Māori Trust Board versus Kauko, in the Court of Appeal in Wellington, before 9 High Court judges, advised the Crown that they had to land back all land to be subject to the return to Tainui. Sunning Car Park was one of them. So we found it very intriguing that Kauko signed off on it in 1992. Landcorp signed, and consequently the Hamilton City Council brought that property. So why wasn't Sunning Car Park put up for negotiation to be returned as part of the Raupari settlement? So those are the facts. Also, I've also if you go on the site, you'll see right below major erosion issues there, and so that is a really big concern in terms of the impact of the erosion and instability of that site as well. So, so those are the other points we need to, perhaps today, that needs to be considered in that context. So again, I want to just keep my presentation short. I'm happy to play bat and ball, curveballs, drop balls, risers. I used to play softball myself, so I welcome any questions from the council. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you. Right, we're not going to cross-examine. We are going to ask questions to fill in those gaps that we need, which would be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to start with Councillor Bidder. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The council staff report opposes option 1, saying renaming a car park does not honour the spirit or intention with the mana and gravitas it deserves. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's actually recorded, Poia Pa is already recorded in the reports. It's recorded in the New Zealand Archaeological Association files. It's been referred to in the media as a Poia Pa. It really, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't agree with the second option. It just makes no sense to me. And secondly, I mean, it's parking on an old pa site. Well, they're doing that at Kirikiriroa Pa, the old pa site over here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still Kirikiriroa Pa. So, I mean, the second option is a silly option, honestly. But I'm very intrigued with the length of the report. Kept me up for a few hours most nights. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor O'Leary. Wiramu, thanks for that and for being here. The upshot of what you're wanting, that kills stone dead any potential development?
Absolutely. Right? I mean, it's just a bad idea to build on top of a pa site, which is also old pa with burial grounds. I mean, many of our pa have disappeared under development in the city for the last 160 years, and we don't have many of those old pa to take people to and share that history with them. I mean, it's a continual feeling of anguish for Ngāti Wairere. Yeah, and also that we keep being excluded out of any discussion about these things.
Are we allowed to? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Just in terms of time, I mean, there's been a car park on it for, 40 years since I was a boy, before probably. I mean, is that not, is that not offensive? There has been no, the issue hasn't been raised in all of that time. But it gets raised when we're about to put some apartments on the property.
Well, there's two ways to answer that. Well, one is that the RMA wasn't around at the time, or the legislation of Heritage New Zealand that allows us by law to be consulted. But also, too, that sadly there have been developments on top of two other urupa in the city without us being included. Number 1 Cook Street for a 10-storey building and the regional theatre. Hadn't the council come to talk to us first, we would have avoided all the cost behind all that and all the anguish of going into the Environment Court to defend our position on that, which came to a cost of $33,500 of ratepayers' money.
Right. Sorry, didn't quite answer the question though. I mean, cars have been parking on the site for 40, 50 years. Why hasn't it been raised earlier?
Well, the legislation wasn't there for us to have that legal right to have a say, because the Public Works Act was used. We didn't have any input over that. It's not about the parking there. It's really at the point today is the name change.
Thank you.
Question first, Madam Chair. There's been a few comments made by the presenter as to the accuracy of some of the staff report.
Yeah.
And so I guess I have some questions of Wiramu, but it would have been helpful to have had an opportunity to let the staff defend or answer some critical questions first. How do you intend to manage that
I intend
component?
to manage that by when Wiramu has finished his presentation, then we're not going to do the cross backwards and forwards with the applicant and staff, but we'll have plenty of time to ask staff those exact questions. So we'll nearly be. I think you're the last person to ask questions of the applicant.
Right. Wiramu, is it your suggestion, since you've highlighted the significant erosion concerns, should we close the car park down immediately? I mean, is there a risk?
I think anything close to the riverbank where there's significant erosion, there's always going to be a risk. I'm not a geotech engineer to make that call, but what we would welcome is a proper archaeological assessment done with ground penetration radar to map what is left of that old pa under the bitumen.
When was the first archaeological assessment done? Because there's been one done.
From my knowledge, it hasn't been a comprehensive one. It's only just been citing public records in that regard, but nothing in the detail.
And on that, how long ago did that go back? When was that first?
The first files that were made for past sites in general were made in the mid-70s.
Right.
Steve Edson was the archaeologist at the time.
Including Songan Car Park?
Yes.
Because when I look at the records, it first started to come up as being identified as having a PAR component way back then.
Yes, that's correct.
So in light of that, why now?
Well, I wasn't made
Because the
aware.
RMA, the RMA's been around for a very long time. When under the Hardacre term, and the Deputy Mayor at the time listed the 6 properties for sale, and Council went out to consult. Yes, yes. Sorry, what did I say?
Never too late.
Carry on, it was council, it wasn't the mayor and the deputy
No,
mayor.
during the Mayor Hardacre mayoralty. And Gordon Chesterman raised that earlier on, Deputy Mayor, in his defence for when he raised the list of 6 properties for sale. Yeah. I don't recall, and I cannot find any record that you raised this as a concern then. The RMA was enforced, the PAR was identified, and Council had gone out clearly saying we were going to sell this land.
I wasn't made aware that there were going to be plans to build a 6-storey building and another 3-storey building on that old PAR site.
Thank you. So is in fact your concern not one of land ownership or name, but more of the level of intensification? Is this really against the level of intensification?
No, not at all.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you just said.
Well, there have been 2 other instances where consents have been granted on at least 2 other burial grounds. The Regional Theatre being one, and number 1 Cook Street for a 10-storey building. Now, as Ngāti Wairere, that is terrible to have intensified buildings per se on those sites, where we were not even consulted about these things. That is the problem. And this is why and I don't want to discuss the merits of our treaty claim, this is not the time or place for it, but this is one of the reasons why we are pursuing a contemporary claim with the Waitangi Tribunal. I wish Hayden could speak to this. Is he going to still come on Zoom? Yeah, so I don't want to
We're in danger of going
Yes.
way off.
Yeah,
I've only got one further question.
okay.
What is in front of us is an application to change a name.
Yes,
So let's,
absolutely.
yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
In regards to the treaty claim, surely nothing should happen until the treaty claim is resolved.
I don't want to really, again, I don't want to raise it here because this is not the forum for it. I mean,
But doesn't it affect the treaty claim? By having changed its name and highlighted the fact that, you know, it's a PAR in the name, does that not affect the treaty claim? Does that not improve your chances of a treaty claim?
To interrupt you, but that, as you well know, that is a decision for us to make today.
What, the treaty claim?
No, whether we would take that into account while we make a decision today. So thank you. Let's wind up our questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that rather long 5 minutes. And as you know, there are items in front of us now, so you're very welcome to stay and hear the discussion and debate.
Thank you.
Kia
Kia ora
ora.
tātou.
Thank you. Look, we've gone on too long. We've gone on too long.
I want to reassure you that we do have a legacy here. And you know what a legacy is. right? You each have a legacy. And we do have a legacy right here on this land. It's been there from 1700. 1700, our legacy. And I just want to quote, we are a descendant here in Waikato. And I just want to quote this Waiata from Potatau, the first Māori king. And this is his words. He said, kia mau ki te ture, that means hold fast to the law. Kia mau ki te whakapono, meaning hold fast to faith. Kia mau ki te aroha, hold fast to love. Hei aha te aha, hei aha te aha, hei aha te aha. Never mind about anything else. Never mind about anything else. And these are the words that I leave to you. Hei aha te aha. Don't make a big stone out of a little peckle of sand. We are who we are. And I will stand by what my nephew just said. We've been here longer than you think. My ancestors, way back 1600, that's a long time. So this whole land here came from them when they came across from Hawaii Nui to Kawhia, then to Kirikiriroa. Nō reira, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Auntie, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we've got Nicholas up, and we are on page 15 of the report. Now, committee members, I'll just get Amy so we all can see what's going on. There's a motion and an amendment, so I have a motion to move option 1 of the report, and that it will be seconded by Councillor Tawariki, and Councillor Taylor has an amendment to that, which option? It's a little bit of a hybrid, isn't it? Yeah. And Amy can email those, and that's seconded by Councillor Wilson. So we'll email those around and we'll pop them up on the board so the audience can also see, and that will help frame the questions and discussion today. Excuse me, Nicholas, would you like to present your report?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. There is a large amount of material to digest, and I sympathise with you. Is this working? Okay. And I sympathise with you for having to digest that large volume of material. But I think it's important in a consideration like this to present all of the information in one place at one time, and that's what I've endeavoured to do in this report. However, the risk, of course, is that it obscures the fundamental issue, and that is quite simply, should this car park be renamed, yes or no, and if so, when should it be renamed, now or at some point in the future? I think it's fair to say there's generally broad agreement on the former. I don't think anyone is saying it's not a good idea to rename Sonning Car Park to the Apoia Pa. The question really, or the difference really, is around the timing of that implementation. And so the question really is, why am I recommending that we delay that? And the reasons are set out in some detail in the report, but I'll just briefly summarise them here. I think it allows effectively the name change to be considered as part of a package pertaining to the land, and as we know, there are a number of issues associated with the site. One is Council's development aspirations for the site, which have evolved over time and continue to evolve in response to changing circumstances. Secondly, there is the issue of the aforementioned treaty claim. And then thirdly, of course, is just the whole issue of what is the best use of the land and how will we roll that out. So that's the reason I am suggesting that we defer it. EDC, the Economic Development Committee, will consider 6 possible development scenarios when it meets next week, and they range from full open public space through to full commercial development. So in other words, a fully open park, effectively, through a variety of combinations of open space and development space, right up to what is effectively the current council position, which is a an intensification and development on the site to provide affordable housing. So that decision obviously is very important and is yet to be made. There is one other matter that has not been covered in the report, and I apologise for that, but the question of dual naming should have been considered. Staff obviously did consider that and rejected it. There was no support for a dual name from the applicants. My view would be that effectively it dilutes the importance of the renaming to tack on a Sonning appellation to it. But also Sonning itself is a name associated as much with girls' education in the city as with the land, possibly more so with girls' education, and that name continues to live on in Sonning Hill, which is of course the girls' high school residence. So as it stands at the moment, the site is a paid public car park and is likely to remain so for the short to medium term. Council's aspiration has been appropriate development to enhance CBD, intended obviously for the benefit of all ratepayers in the city. And we have a live housing outcomes agreement, which requires us to use our reasonable endeavours to deliver affordable housing outcome on that site. I'll just point out a couple of minor errors too. Paragraph 129, there are 3 options, not 4. And paragraph 132 references paragraph 130. It should be 131, obviously. So the resolution basically as it stands supports the name change, recommends deferring implementation until all of these issues can be discussed in a holistic manner, recommends partnering with mana whenua, basically putting them front and centre in this discussion. And then also, and this was interesting to me, captures Jesmond Park. What I think is worth just perhaps commenting on is if you look at attachment 8 on page 70 of the report, you'll see that the boundaries of Apoya Pa extend both sides of the Claudelands Road and railway line and include quite a lot more than just the major part of the Sonning car park site. So it would seem reasonable to take that into consideration as well when making a name change of this nature. And on that, I'm quite happy to take questions, Madam Chair.
Right, let's open up for questions. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Nicholas, there were quite a few comments made, both in the public forum and at the beginning, that implied and in fact said staff had either failed to provide or had deliberately didn't provide. Having had chance to review all the records, can you walk me through how long this council has been considering selling this site or developing it, and what, if any, process has council gone through to have, and what advice has council taken? And the third limb is, and what publicity, what promotion had we made of that decision? Because there was an accusation that basically that council staff failed to provide all the information that was said in this chamber. And I just want to give council staff an opportunity to either confirm that or dispute that.
Thank you. So I think we're really going back about 10 years now, and look, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be in a position to give you exact dates, but my recollection is approximately 10 years ago, the council considered 4 strategic land holdings that it owned. So they were the car park behind the Arts Post site, the VOTR site, which has subsequently been developed as public park, the Sonning car park site, and what we refer to as the Heafy Brooklyn site, which is the commercial site adjoining Claudelands. Council decided at that stage to go out to the market effectively with a brochure that was prepared and offered the opportunity to come and present a proposal to council. And really that's as much as was done at that stage. Over the years, and if we talk about Sonning specifically, we have received two what I would describe as concrete development proposals. There have been discussions which haven't resulted in anything. And in all cases, the assumption was that there would be a period of due diligence that would be undertaken by developers once the council had given an in-principle approval for that development to take place. And we relied always heavily on the provisions of the district plan as they applied. So that included archaeological provisions, geotech provisions, all those sorts of things in there. So I think that's as much as I can say on the history. I don't know if that's answered your question.
Well, let's just, so roughly 2013.
Roughly.
At that time, was there any mention to elected members or council that there was any indication of the partial PAR site in light of the fact that we've known it's been listed since 1970?
That's a difficult question to answer because I'm not sure who the council officers who were promoting that at the time might have been. I suspect that what would have happened is that they would have relied heavily on the district plan and the provisions in the district plan which included the PAR site. So it may not have been highlighted as a specific item or it may have been alluded to.
That the district plan back in 2013 when the brochure was made, the district plan highlighted, it was in the district plan, was it not?
Yes, indeed.
So our actual district plan had shown on that site, one of the four chosen, that it was a PAR site. I think that's a yes. Have we had any geotech work done at any time?
Yes, we had a geotech report done in conjunction with, by Opus, as they then were, WSP, I think, as they now are. And that was done in 2020.
And what did that tell us?
At high level, it told us that the site would require specific, there would be specific geotechnical investigation required for specific development on the site. So effectively, and that's appended, it's attached as item attachment 9. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just want to remind committee members too that whilst speakers in the public forum may have raised a much wider range of issues, that is their entitlement to do so, and their reasons behind this application are theirs and theirs alone. We do need to stay focused. I know there's an awful lot of attachments on here, possibly not as helpful, but we are the first to criticise our team if they don't provide us with the information. So it's always a rock and a hard place, I think. But remember, this is an application for a name change, and helpfully coming to Councillor Wilson's committee on the 14th of September, that's where we will have the substantive debate about some high-level considerations. So please keep that in mind as we move through further questions. Thank you. Councillor Bidder.
Nicholas, I just want to get a better understanding of option 3. So there's 3 quick questions on that. So firstly, given we're talking about name changes, where's the name Jesmond come from?
That's a very good question. I'm not exactly sure because the land was not gifted by a chap called Jesmond. So we would need to investigate that and come back. And I mean, that would be part of the work that would be done as that exploration of the validity of changing that name.
Yeah. Also on Jesmond Park, as a public reserve, it can't be sold. What sort of development could happen there?
Yes, that's a good point. If you have a look at, again, the attachment on page 70, you can see Jesmond Park is the area shown hatched in green. So half of it's within the sort of what we might refer to as the Apoya Pa boundary. When you're standing on the ground, a considerable portion of what we refer to as Jesmond Park is actually unformed legal road. So that's the bit that runs up to the Claudelands Road Bridge. And then there's a bank as well, which is actually privately owned, which comes down from the dwelling 169.
Right, yeah.
So in answer to your question, we could develop it appropriately as a reserve, so memorials, public art, signage, those sorts of things. There would be no commercial development of it. That would necessitate a reserve revocation, which is a lengthy and protracted process.
Yep. And lastly, so the staff report, paragraph 13, says, describes Jesmond as the primary location of the Apoya site. Could you just give me a little bit more as to why there's more on Jesmond than on the car park?
That's a very good question. Look, it's tricky to pin down, I suppose, but if you have a look at the Council's own archaeological assessment, which I'm just looking for here, which is attached on page 184 of the report. Yeah. So this is the archaeological site inventory. And effectively, it shows the red dot with the number against it as being in Jesmond Park. And I think from my reading, and I've read all of this material, my reading is that there's no real consistency from one report to the next. They vary slightly around the edges and in some of the detail. But what is consistent across all the reports is that the Sonning car park component has been very, very heavily modified to the point of destruction, really. Whereas Jesmond Park would appear to be in a more undisturbed state. I mean, it's clearly obviously been modified and bridges built and so forth, but it remains less modified than Sonning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask some questions about page 33 under risks. The general gist of the risks section is largely about perception. Perception that it's intended to become a reserve, expectation land can only be used as public space, etc. I just wanted to clarify that that's all about public perception.
Yes, that's a good observation, and you're right. But I would suggest to you also that the council has an aspiration, and this may change, but as things stand at the moment, the council has an aspiration that this site be developed. In that context, perception becomes quite important in the development community. How easy is it going to be to do this? Are we going to find it a challenging site to develop? Is the council sending mixed messages? Are we getting clear buy-in from the landowner, as it were, on the way in which we might step through a development of the site? This is a valuable, significant development site as it stands at the moment. Now, you may, of course, decide that ultimately that's not what you want to do here, but my job is to pursue that target.
In a follow-up question, I'm just sort of skimming through this to see where I've highlighted it, but in terms of the name change itself, materially, that's not going to change the requirement of any developer who has to engage with is it Heritage New Zealand and doing the archaeological work.
Correct.
That's not going to change by changing the name.
No, it's not. And look, I mean, a name change would always have been envisaged as part of a development.
Could you also say then, though, that there is a risk that council could be perceived to be glossing over our history then if we choose not to highlight this name change?
Glossing over our history in what respect?
Well, there's nothing that I could see in the reports that said this wasn't Apoya Pa. So it is Apoya Pa,
yes,
whether we call it or not.
Yes.
But could council be perceived to be glossing over our history or be continuing to do so if we choose to delay the renaming of it?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't think we could be accused of glossing over our history if we delay it. I mean, this report is quite clear. It says that changing the name to Opoipa is appropriate. The issue is the timing of that change. And that is viewed through really the lens of a development site or a piece of land that we need to think about options for. At some point, it will change its name. So, and you're right. There's no ambiguity. It is a Opoipa. There's no question about that. So I don't think we could be accused of glossing over the change. I mean, I think what we're suggesting is, you could change the name now. You could change the name at some point in the future. Our position, which I think is reasonable, is look, let's take a holistic approach. Let's look at all of the pieces in this puzzle and come together with a comprehensive plan rather than picking bits off piecemeal.
Okay. Can I ask one last follow-up question? Is the aspiration of council to develop the site a current resolution of council?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, just quickly, Nicholas, thank you for your report and so forth. In our policy, there's a fee to be paid for a name change. Is that right?
There is, yes.
Yep. And have we received? Does that come through with application?
No, we haven't requested a fee in this case.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is that the site, as I say, is part that there are multiple issues associated with it that all need to be dealt with together. But that's effectively the reason for that.
Okay.
Councillor Tawariki?
Just confirming that the name change will have no significant impact on Mana Whenua's treaty claim?
We haven't tested that one way or another. It may or may not. I don't know.
So would it be fair to say that we need to test that to manage risk?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, in a sense, the council sits outside that treaty claim process. We're not a party to it. And ultimately, if that claim proceeds, it will proceed in a tribunal. We may or may not be in a position to make a submission. But ultimately, whatever the findings of that tribunal end up being, that will be an issue for the Crown to resolve, not for the Council to resolve. And omissions and errors on the Crown's behalf are the responsibility of the Crown. Does that answer the question?
In part, it does. I do understand the complexity of what you are responding to.
The report and Council for the questions. That is all of the questions. Amy, have you emailed everyone? All right, so everyone, you should have in your inboxes. 8:37 came through, so there's the motion by myself. No, I'm the mover. Yes. And Councillor Tawariki the seconder, and then an amendment there. So I'll just very briefly explain, and then I'll allow Councillor Taylor to explain his, in terms of the difference of the staff rec. So the difference for the motion that myself and Councillor Tawariki are putting up is that we approve option 1 with immediate effect, so that is the name change, and all other options as the staff report are in there, with the exclusion of deferring the name, obviously, until a plan for enhancing, and also we have removed the C, which is also deferring implementation of the name change, etc. We're still noting, obviously, that the high-level options will go to, for the development of the site, will go to Councillor Wilson's committee on the 14th of December, and that we will partner with Mana Whenua to consider next steps, etc., and have them involved in that process. So that's the explanation of the motion. Councillor Taylor, would you like to explain your intent with the amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, mine is to defer any decision on the name change until certainly until next week's economic development meeting where some decisions are made, but also until such time as the council actually decides what it wants to do with the site. And if it did develop it, it would be something that would be done in association with any developer, anyone who might purchase the site.
Great, thank you. All right, that seems to be clear. There are no confused looks on anybody's faces, so we will move into debate now. I will, as the mover, I will go first, and then I will go to the mover of the amendment, Councillor Taylor. Then I will jump over to Councillor Tawariki. So, look, I couldn't do this justice. My debate, I know I wouldn't do it justice. But so I'm going to really focus on the site and my future personal wish for the site. After reading the report, for me, the connection to the name sonning is very tenuous at best. And I read that there was a school established on the site by a Mrs. Whitehorn at some point, and it was simply named Sonning after a school that she went to in England. And if that's not an example of a tenuous connection, I don't know what is. Look, my long-term aspiration for the site, for a variety of reasons, also include the outcomes sought by Ngāti Waireere for the future of this site, is to recognise it as a site of historical and cultural significance for our city, to return it to a PAR site that will be a public space for everyone to collectively embrace and learn about the history of not only our city but of our country as well. If I put on a climate change hat, if I put the historical significance of renaming this site aside, and I think about the intensification that we are looking for in our city, our residents are going to need a calm green space to relax and to embrace and to be who they are as citizens of, again, our city and our country. So I know that that is a future debate and that there are differing views around the table for that site, but today this is about whether or not we change the name of the site, and that, I guess, concludes my debate. So, wow, gosh, I did that well, didn't I? Councillor Taylor is the mover of the amendment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor O'Leary. Last term, Councillor Martin Gallagher suggested a type of heritage map across the city, a Māori heritage map, showing a genuine historical picture right across the city, right from the start, important places for Māori, how we should be naming streets, etc. And the aim of that was to avoid ad hoc decision making and surprises. I supported that. So I guess what I'm talking about here is a process issue. This site has been used as a car park for probably 50 years. It's been the subject of numerous development proposals over the years without objection. But now, coincidentally, following the Nightingale-type proposal for 262 upmarket apartments, which the local residents didn't want, the site's history as a PAR site gets raised. So my issue is not about the name change, I accept that. My issue is about what happens to the land afterwards. Let's not get the name change confused with the land ownership. Our legal advice is there is no basis for a treaty claim on the land. So whatever the name, there is no impediment to selling the land and developing it. So I'm concerned that the expectation behind a name change is that it will suddenly close the door on any opportunity to develop a prime site which this cash-strapped council and its long-suffering ratepayers could benefit from. There's an Economic Development Committee meeting next week to discuss the future development options for this site. Why on earth would we agree to a name change now, precluding any chance of development? Let's wait. When you get to a situation where renaming sites is being suggested in order to avoid development on those sites, and there's an element of that happening here, I think that's not right. So my motion doesn't oppose changing the name, but keeps options to develop the site open until this council actually makes that decision. Thank you.
Councillor Tauraki as the seconder of the motion next, and then I will continue. Councillor
Tēnā
Tauraki.
koe Deputy Mayor. He mihi ka tika ana ki ngaku whānau no roto mai o Ngāti Wairere. The decision that is before us today is a name change one, and that's what I'm going to be speaking to. I support the name change to take effect immediately. I also support in that motion, Deputy Mayor, the partnering with mana whenua to consider what that conversation looks like in the future. I don't believe our mana whenua have had that intimate opportunity to consider the myriad of options that they have before them. It's not typically a space where they've been a part of those sorts of conversations outside of Waikato Tainui. And so therefore we have an opportunity to bring mana whenua directly into their conversation, and whatever the decision is at that particular time, with their voices at the table, that's what it shall be. I certainly do support any efforts to return sites like this back to a natural green space with a host of information boards, etc., as was recommended in the 2003 report, Ngā Tapu Wai o Hotu Mauia, which Council commissioned at that time in 2003. I also note the latest archaeological assessment report that we do have goes back to 2011, and so I think it's probably time that we revisit that need. I heard ground penetrating radar from Mr. Wiremu Puke and his kōrero, and I support any moves that we should consider a ground penetration radar assessment of that particular site to assess its stability, integrity. Kia ora.
Wilson.
Yeah, thanks. Although this is really a discussion about the name change, we all in our debate have wandered on to many other subjects, including what we would like to use the land for. So I intend to join the merry band. No one disputes the fact that this council, in its wisdom, a number of years ago and more recently, decided that this land was up for sale and for redevelopment. And in fact, it started a number of years ago, and there's an irony that at the time that members of the public who are now in this chamber were very much part of the council who decided that, although we've heard that they didn't have all the information, despite the district plan. So here we are. I personally have no difficulty in changing a name. I certainly have no difficulty in inviting a meaningful and ongoing discussions by mana whenua. In fact, I thought we already had an obligation to do that, and in fact, the RMA requires it. Our joint group meetings with Council and mana whenua and iwi enables it, so I continue to see and support that occurring. Here's the issue here, though. This is a really simple one. This council, like this country, has a number of crises it's trying to manage. One of them is housing. And this council, in its wisdom, decided that it was in the business of trying to support and help resolve the issue of affordable housing, social housing, and as part of that, we've gone out proactively. We've said to the government, we're going to be in the business of trying to develop land to enable to fix this crisis. But then on the other hand, we're now running around saying, oh, but we're going to not do it there, not do it there, not do it there. That's fine, but eventually we have to land on some meaningful initiative to fix the crisis. All you're doing by turning this into green space is kicking that problem down the road. Where's the solution?
Thank you. Councillor Bidder.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We all know that Sonning Car Park is a car park, so I don't see any problem in changing the name, and I don't see it dishonouring the spirit or intention and manner and gravitas of the name change. So I do support option 1. I am also supporting option 3 because I put it to Ngāti Wairere that when we get more information on Jesmond Park, it looks to me like there's opportunities for a better commemoration on that site as is already a public reserve with less destroyed archaeological significance than under the car park, and that perhaps the council could support treaty claims or something on that site, leaving the car park site for development, so that there is a possible win-win there to look at in the future. But in the meantime, I support option 1 and 3.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Today's debate, believe it or not, is just about changing a name. We're not actually making any decision around the future use of the site, and I really don't think that changing the name, given we all know it's a PAR, given it's all been in the media, given it's on maps and district plans and wherever it is really going to change a lot in terms of, you know, what that future decision could be. I don't think we're putting ourselves in a box. I don't think we're narrowing options. And so I will support option 1 to just go ahead and do it. I think it's quite simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pike.
Kia ora. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Angela. Sorry. And I just want to start by acknowledging Ngāti Wairere and Mana Whenua in the room today. And I thank staff also for their comprehensive report and work on this. My thoughts are clear as I see today's decision, like Councillor Thompson's, as a name change, so I will keep it short. I see that today we have the opportunity to right our wrongs and acknowledge the history of the Apuia PAR site by changing the name. As a former Hamilton Girls High student and the daughter of a boarder at Sonning Hill many decades ago, I believe Sonning name is rightly and best upheld there. I also believe leaving the name change to the future risks losing this opportunity or watering it down. We must recognise the significance of the site, and therefore I believe the right decision today is to vote for option 1, and I will be casting my vote today to honour the history of Ngāti Wairere. Thank you.
Councillor Casey Cox.
Kia ora, and to acknowledge Ngāti Wairere in the room today. We have some injustices in our beginnings as a city, and this renaming is one way that I see as a path towards restoration. It represents the restoration of right relationship that was promised in Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And I don't think we need to delay because we're worried about some of the issues described in the report. I think we have an opportunity to find ways together to honour this place of Apuia PAR. And that's the key point. We will find ways together in unity to honour this space. And I think that represents a unique way forward, where we get the basics right first and we walk together with Mana Whenua at the table from the outset, which has also always been the call, and for Apuia, and through this renaming now we have it and we have the opportunity. So definitely support option 1 and 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutt.
Thank you. So this site is Apuia PAR, regardless of the decision today. But really this boils down to us honouring and acknowledging our history. Anyone engaging with this site, for any reason, has to engage with this history. So why not own it? Why not provide the opportunity for our public to also engage with it? I'm not going to make comments on intensification because that's not the decision in front of us. But really this boils down to coming back to needing to work with Mana Whenua closely and I don't believe there's any reason why we can't have shared aspirations for the site. I want to wholeheartedly thank Ngāti Wairere for your continued advocacy about this and about many other things in our city, despite the history of the Crown's actions and despite land being taken from them. Everyone talks about the glacial pace of local government. I've heard that God knows how many times in the year that I've been on council. But this is an opportunity to do something now that costs us sweet all. And why should we not take an opportunity to not act at a glacial pace? So I really say, let's take it. What an opportunity in front of us.
And Austin.
Thank you. I think from time to time you are, as a council, presented with some great opportunities to show real union and opportunity to show respect to our mana whenua, and it seems to me that this is the chance to be able to do that. Not to defer a decision to elongate any further harm or pain, but to put things right. And that's what I'd like to be able to support today, an immediate change to Apoia Park name, to restore its mana. The fact it's a car park isn't even a problem. We know that there is cars parked in other significant sites for our iwi, and I acknowledge that. I think that we have huge potential with this site, not only as an opportunity to develop it or for it to become a park, but actually for it to become an opportunity for us as a council and Ngāti Wairere to really consult and talk about what its future might be. And it may in fact even be both of those things together. But until we get in the room and talk about what that could look like, we're not going to be able to advance it further. Let's do the right thing today and make it a name change immediately. Kia ora.
Councillor Naidoo-Roll.
Thank you, and acknowledge you in the room. It's been interesting listening to this debate because I came in thinking, well, not knowing what the intentions of Ngāti Wairere were for the piece of land, and I've heard, you know, things like gifting the land. I've heard about green space. We've heard about the housing constraints that we have in our city, and I know that we've had conversations around a Māori housing model, a papakainga for the site, which you know, is something to be discussed further. As for today's decision about renaming the area, I have no issues with renaming. I actually support renaming to Apoia Pa. For myself, it is about timing, so I'm going to support Jeff's amendment only because of the timing. It makes sense for me that we have that discussion first and then rename it together for whatever the future of it may look like. Because it is a bit strange renaming and then next week talking about the options, so it just doesn't make sense in my head in terms of timeline. So I really wished that meeting would have happened before this meeting. But yes, not against the name change, but I am in favor of just waiting to have that conversation first.
Right, that concludes all the speakers. I'll do a very brief right of reply, if I may. Just responding to the last speaker, Councillor Naidoo-Roll, around timing. I think, as Councillor Hutso rightly put it, it's been Apoia Pa for as long as we can remember in council documents, as well as with mana whenua in their hearts. So I don't think there's an issue there of timing at all. The reality is we have a policy, it's a fairly new policy, we're working with it, it allows our citizens to bring forward requests for name changes, and that is a process open to anyone. I want to acknowledge, as my previous colleagues have, and thank Ngāti Waireere for bringing us this application, and more importantly for bringing us the opportunity to return the mana to Apoiapa. Kia ora and thank you. Right, we will put this to the vote. We'll do that on the show of hands. All those in...
Please do it on the boards, because we've got...
Oh, sorry, we do. Yes, sorry, Councillor Taylor. We're going to vote on the amendment first, and we'll pop that up on the board. So that's the, sorry, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Wilson amendment. We will vote on that. Yes, we will do it on the board. All right, so this is... we're all clear? The amendment, can we just pop that up just for members of the audience as well? So this is the Taylor-Wilson amendment, yep. So not that one. Keep it going. Thank you. We'll break for morning tea after this, team. All right, there we go. So let's vote using the board on the amendment now.
The amendment is lost. 8-4, 4 against. Sorry. 4, 8 against.
The tongue twister.
Too many.
Right, let's move to the motion now. This is the O'Leary Tawariki motion. Let's do that on the board. Thank you.
The motion is carried. 8-4. Correct this time. 4 against.
Thank you, everyone. We will break till 11:15 for morning tea. Thank you. I thought...
Snip.
Lunch, important announcement, lunch is arriving at 12:30, so let's be finished by then. All right, so next item up, team, page 280 is item 9, the electoral decision for the 2025 triennial election, and we have online Dale Ofsofsky, and we have in our hot seat in front of us, we have Mish. So we're on page 280, so over to you to present the report. Mish, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're presenting a report to Council because there is a requirement to give public notice by 19th September 2023 of the decision and right of electors to demand a poll on the electoral system, and also to address the decision on the timing for the next representation arrangements review. What is, I suppose, bound up with this is the question of the electoral system as well, so whether you retain STV or change by resolution to first past the post. We have Dale online to answer any technical questions on this matter, but I'll otherwise take the report as read. Thank you.
And council members, we have a motion from Councillor Taylor, and we have an amendment from Councillor Councillor Thompson. So we'll have those emailed.
So that was my motion.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson. I've got down here Jeff. Councillor. He did.
A motion/amendment been seconded yet? Okay.
By Councillor Donovan, I'm assuming, yes.
I sent it through.
Sorry.
I sent it through
You
yesterday.
did. So we will get those emailed to us again.
You even thanked me for sending it through.
I did thank you for sending it through. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you so much, Councillor Wilson. All right, so we'll get those circulated, but let's go to questions of the report first. If there are any questions, it could be quite a straightforward one. Don't make up a question if you don't have one. That's what I'd say. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. My question is simply this. In light of the fact that we had gone from a record high turnout in 2019 to one of our lowest, are our experts able to share a view on why that occurred? Particularly the drop was more proportional in Hamilton than it was as a national trend.
Yeah. Dale, did you hear that question?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Hamilton had a 10% drop, which was significant, down to the lowest turnout in the country in 2022. The reason for turnout or up and lower turnout is varied, and the electoral system could be one reason, but there are other more significant reasons, such as who's standing for mayor. Is there actually a mayoral election? If there's no mayoral election, we find that the turnout dropped. Whether there are any burning local issues, it's another reason for increasing or lowering turnout. The number and calibre of candidates standing, whether people can be bothered voting, for example. And if there's too many candidates, for example, people can't be bothered, they turn off and can't bother researching. So really it's a whole gambit of reasons. Hamilton moved to STV in 2022. They also established Māori wards in 2022. They had a representation review, which is, of course, established the Māori ward. So there's a whole raft of factors that I can't pinpoint one particular factor that could have led to that.
Great, thank you, Dale.
That was it?
That was it. That was Councillor Hutt.
I'm getting used to being only allowed to ask.
Can I just clarify? I wrote this as a note down from a conversation with a staff member, and I can't remember who it was. But I wrote down a note that we aren't currently doing any civics education. Could I just query staff if anyone... I may have written it down wrong. I just wanted to clarify if that was correct.
So currently, for you,
Chair, please. So currently, the civic education program is part bundled up with the youth advisor role, which at the moment is vacant. We do plan to do civic education, so it's not that it's not happening, but at this quite point in time, because there is nothing happening, but we will be doing it in the future.
Okay. By the next election?
Yes, of course.
Depending on LTP budgets.
No. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Michelle, I just wanted to confirm, if my understanding is correct, that the timeframes don't allow for any consultation over this decision like we did last term.
That's correct. The notices have to be, sorry, the decisions and notices have to be completed by the 12th and the 19th of September. I think from off the top of my head, Dale is nodding, so I am getting this right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right, there's very few questions. I guess we're all extremely familiar with the topic and we've read the report. So let's have a look at those motions again. Amy, you've sent them to us, eh? So, they're all in the early. Okay, well let's pop them up. Let's have a look at Councillor Wilson's motion first. And Councillor Wilson, if you just explain the intent of the motion without debate, and you're very good at that.
To go back to first past the post.
Okay, it's pretty clear. And Councillor Thompson, your amendment, can you just explain?
To retain the current system.
Okay, great, thank you. I think sometimes it seems quite obvious to us, but remember we've got online viewers as well.
So to retain the single transferable voting system which we currently have in place.
Great, okay. All right, thank you very much. So let's open up for debate then. I will go to the mover of the motion first, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have for a number of years been a supporter of moving to STV. I read the literature, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was swung. I was convinced it was going to lead to a fairer election. Minorities were going to be better represented, and it was going to be easy to use. I think I was lied to, because it hasn't resulted in that. It's been a social experiment that has failed miserably. You cannot go off the highest level of voter participation in 2019 and see it plummet by 10%, higher than any other drop, and not associate that with the change of voting system. I look around this table and I see diversity. I see gender balance. But I was seeing that way back before STV. What I now see, though, as a result of STV, less people voted, and those who could vote, more of them spoiled their votes. Why would we want to continue with a system that has failed miserably? Now, we've heard the experts, they say, well, it's nebulous. It could be one of many reasons. One of them was that we were all hopeless and there was no community interest in participating. Well, that's a really ringing endorsement for all of us sitting around the council table. Another one was, well, the mayoral race was a bit of a disaster. There was nothing really going on. You've got to be kidding. There was a lot going on with the mayoral race. So the bottom line is, I think there is a direct correlation through the social experiment that went wrong. We had an inconsistency on the same voting paper. You had first past the post and STV. Until we change and have a national strategy that every vote should be one or the other, let's go back to first past the post.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson as the mover of the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Due to time constraints, I'm not going to spend forever talking about the merits of STV. What I am going to talk about is process here. Last term, in 2020, we We went out for consultation for a whole month. We had well over 900 submissions come back, which for council is a pretty good response. 78% of respondents preferred STV. We had a 40-page report come to council. We spent hours on this decision. There was lots of community engagement and notice around this decision happening. We decided to implement STV and use it for the most recent election and for 2025. I do not think it is appropriate for us today to now be making a decision with basically zero notice to the public and the community to suddenly flip that around and say, we said we'd do this for 2 election cycles, hey, actually we're going to change back. What happened to that consultation? What about the consultation? What about the community that's a legitimate expectation that we would be waiting until next term to do another review? Next term, we will do a full review of the electoral system. We will have the opportunity and the time to do proper consultation. And if people want to change the system then, that's your prerogative. But I do not think it is good process to suddenly be doing this today. Most people, if they hear in the news tomorrow that we've suddenly gone and changed back to first past the post, they will be stunned. They'll go, this has come out of the blue. Where on earth did this come from? I didn't get a say on this. So I don't think it's a good process, and I urge elected members to wait until we can do a thorough review and do this properly with community notice and consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Osten.
Thanks, Councillor Sarah. I couldn't agree more about the process and about the shock that would be in our community if we were to overturn, flip-flop on this decision. We introduced STV in the local body elections for 2022 after an extensive discussion, deliberation of our council and engagement with our residents. The 2020 report outlined the full debate, and it also highlighted that through the engagement campaign, almost 80% of those submitters preferred the STV system. I can't see how it could be plainer. I note also that the Future for Local Government panel's final report recommended STV as the preferred system for right across the country. There's a chapter in there on replenishing local democracy, and I can recommend it to you for those who are interested in citizen-led democracy. Hamilton did have a large drop in voter participation, and that was for right across the country, but there's far more to a low voter turnout than simply the introduction of a new system. Under the leadership of Mayor Paula, Hamilton has been recognised as a high-functioning, cohesive council, and we've worked through, in the last term, really complex challenges and overcome some pretty prickly issues with often a unanimous vote. All the current councillors who sought to be re-elected were, and that suggests that there was a level of satisfaction in the community with our representation. In my observation, an election is often an opportunity to vote people out. I think it's worth persevering with the original course of the meeting, and to seek out a second triennial election with an STV system. Then, at that time, would be a time for review. That would be a time to assess the turnout and other outcomes. It would also be an opportunity for voters to settle into the new system, as we heard Priya talk about earlier today. I only hope, though, that we have the opportunity to look at some other reforms to be introduced in the meantime, meaningfully growing our participation, like allowing 16-year-olds to vote, like making more voting accessibility for everyone, expanding options for them to be able to vote.
Councillor.
So with that in mind, I'll be supporting the motion to keep STV.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Deputy Mayor Angela. Look, I'll support Councillor Wilson's motion to go back to first past the post. Numbers don't lie. How anyone could argue that 29.4% voter turnout is an okay result which I think is what I just heard, surprises me. I always worried that STV would be confusing for residents, and so it proved. Despite a massive education and awareness campaign, intuitively, it was always obvious to me that STV was going to demand more from already apathetic voters. The voter turnout has been covered, went up from an all-time high, I believe, down to an all-time low. And it's embarrassing, 29.4%, that's embarrassing. Yep, there may be other reasons for it. Personally, I thought there were two excellent mayoral candidates. I thought the purple shirt might have got them over the line as well. Yeah, but seriously, I mean, it was, you know, it wasn't that one candidate got 15,000 and something votes, another got 14,000. It wasn't, you know, it was a good, lively campaign. And just look at the quality of councillors around this table, and you can see that, you know, they had good choices to vote for. So it's not us, it's the system. And I don't quite share the sentiment that that if we go back to FPP today, the shockwaves will reverberate around our electorate. Our consultation was highly dominated by highly engaged groups who wanted STV. Most people couldn't give a rat's. They'll get on with it, and I think they'll find a tick a hell of a lot better than trying to rank people. The guy or the woman who said, keep it simple, stupid, they were on to something. Thank you.
Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be supporting my good friend, Councillor Wilson, obviously as seconder, and Councillor Taylor's just stolen one of my points, which was the KISS theory, so hang on, I'm just going to have to cross that out. But to his point about the purple shirt, I thought the shirt off scene was probably more engaging than anything. Perhaps I suggest that, oh no, I won't say that, it's inside the voice, inside my head. Yeah, okay. Look, I did a tremendous amount of door knocking, and I'm not one to throw stats out there, but I reckon I did more than most, so I'm just going to own that. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that every single door I knocked on, barring probably one or two, they all said, what is this new voting system? It is ridiculously hard to understand. I can remember going to workshops and we were all asking how to work. Even the day it came for me to fill out my own voting form, I even looked at it and went, holy crap, what do I do? And, you know, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but, you know, I'd like to think I've got a few smarts. So it was confusing. That was the part. It was confusing. And Jeff is right. Keep it simple. If people want to make a change, run for council and get back in and change it. We can, this is what we do. We make decisions. We've talked about what? Glacial pace. Let's change something and change it back. If it doesn't work, change it back. That's what you do. We do it in business all the time. Yeah, game plan. We've got one. Change it back. I've lost my train of thought. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The percentages of people that turned out to give feedback on the initial going to a change. If I heard correctly, it was 800. I think Councillor Maxine quoted 800 people were over 900. It's less than 0.5% of the population of Hamilton.
Thank you. Councillor Tawariki.
Yes, I like that one from Mr. Donovan. Make decisions. A decision was made, and the decision that was made was that STV should be in place for 2022 and 2025. So a decision was made by the governors at that time, and I think we should stick to that decision. I think there are a number of issues. We could split them all up, but there was a huge demographic that actually didn't get any voting papers at all, and we're trying to work towards moving that demographic out of what we call emergency housing. And so as I've gone to that demographic of people and asked them if they received their voting forms, they didn't. And so they weren't even factored, they weren't even given the opportunity to exercise their civil liberties. And so I think as good governors, those of us that are new and those that have been here for some time, I think we should stick with the decision that we've made, that has been previously made, and wait till 2025 or after the 2025 elections, and then we can change it then. But until now, I'll be supporting the STV option. Kia ora.
Thank you. So there's no silver bullet for fixing voter turnout, because if there was, we would have thought of it and done it long before I was elected to council. And I feel that it is entirely unfair to blame STV for a low voter turnout. The 2019 election might have been the highest since 2004, but it was still less than 40%, and that is still absolutely ridiculous and embarrassing. It's not as if First Past the Post was delivering us a 60% voter turnout or an 80% voter turnout like the general election. Yes, our voter turnout dipped, but Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin all ousted their mayors and we didn't. It's not straightforward to compare our results. I agree with Professor Kurian. Voter turnout is impacted by a wide range of things, and we would not be giving the system a fair go to change it now. And members of the public who asked me what we were talking about today were shocked that it had already come round for us to decide on our voting system again. And I said, oh, no, it's not. So, I mean, members of the public will be shocked if we change it again today. Regarding the consultation we've already done, I do want to acknowledge how boring and unsexy and nerdy voting systems are, and if our city engaged on this, and engaged significantly, we should take that seriously, because getting people to care about voting system is like one of the uncoolest things I could think of, and I've earnestly tried to do that for a long time. We've always had mixed voting papers, and to suggest that the public can't cope with ticking one side and writing numbers on the other is unfair, and I have more faith in our public and in Councillor Donovan than that. The question is STV a more democratic and proportional voting system? The answer is yes. Thank you.
Councillor Bidder, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The thought that just came to me is that we really should change the voting papers to alphabetical order again.
Before I go, there are no other speakers, I don't think. Before I go to the right to reply, I'll say a few words. And look, it's been great listening to the debate. There's been some excellent debate and right on point. And I would usually agree with my friend and colleague, Councillor Thompson, about process. But actually, one of the processes available to this council is to make a decision. I was also convinced from a very long campaign last time around STV, but I'm also now convinced about a few other things. I don't think a drop in just under 10% had anything to do with issues or with a mayoral race or anything else. I just don't buy that. I'm swayed by what I heard after the last election time and time again. I didn't vote, I don't know, I can't be bothered. We used to tick and now we don't. And I heard that. I also spoke to one of the really strong drivers of STV that came to us over years, and she was perplexed as well. The report says that even though we had an increase in public awareness from 81 to 88% with a, quote, highly effective and recognisable campaign, our voter turnout still dropped. It was the worst in the country. The report said that STV was compelling and widely understood. At least we thought so, but I don't think the public did, because we dropped by nearly 10%. We also say in this report that an increase in correctly enrolled voters went up by 7%, that campaign impressions more than tripled, and yet invalid voting papers went up. We were almost 10% lower than in the national average voter turnout. Something didn't go well. So, I've looked at the report. I've looked at New Plymouth, who has had STV for a while, which begs the argument, stick to it, hang in there, it will improve. I don't know that it will. And until, as I think Councillor Wilson or someone said, until we have a national one for everyone, keep it simple, stupid. I just have lost so much faith, so I'm supporting the motion. Thank you. Right of reply, Councillor Wilson.
Deputy Mayor. Councillor Muku, I appreciated your debate and your narrative. The difficulty is the burden you now have to carry if we are going to lock ourselves into sticking to earlier decisions of council. I will remind you of that at the next time you disagree with an earlier decision of council. As to silver bullets, may I remind this chamber, there is not an easy solution, but a really good indicator is if you've dropped 10%, what you've changed to isn't working. And so you don't need to be a neuroscientist to suddenly realise maybe I should change direction. The suggestion of being concerned about flip-flopping, nothing wrong with flip-flopping. Politicians do it all the time. What it means is we've experimented, we've listened, we've monitored, it's not worked, and we've changed direction. My final point is, and Councillor Maxine highlighted it, and most of my colleagues will agree with it, local democracy is absolutely essential. Local democracy in New Zealand is vital. The thing we need with local democracy is participation. And when you've had a 10% plummet, it makes no sense in sticking to a process that clearly isn't working. If you do, then one has to wonder whether or not it's more about an ideology than truly believing in local democracy is about participation.
Right, so let's do this on the board now. Members, I've tried to get round all of you. I will not use a casting vote if it is split because we already have a system on the record, so it would be status quo. Okay, so let's put this to the vote on the board.
Which one are we voting on?
Sorry, we're voting on the amendment first. So this is Councillor Thompson and Councillor, who's your seconder? Me. Councillor Van Osten. So amendment first, and this is to retain STV for those viewers online. So let's vote now. So I'm not going to, as I said, there is a decision on the table, I'm not going to use my casting vote. So if I don't use it for a casting vote, does that just lapse and we move to the motion, or do we have to defeat? We haven't done this before, eh?
No.
No, I have no problem making any hard decision, but because, as I said, because we've got something on, but we've got to rid an amendment before we can do a motion, so I don't recall ever having the chair having a casting vote on an amendment. It must just lapse, right? And move to the motion. Give it a minute,
Yeah,
sorry.
can I just have a moment? Because I've not had this one and I was trying to process it before and didn't land it.
How's that in all our years here?
We saw it coming.
Yeah.
So actually, philosophic.
No.
In theory, you'd be not casting the vote on the current status quo. You'd be casting a vote on the matter in front of you.
Yeah.
If you'd gone to the final substantive motion and there had been a draw.
Yeah.
Then you would be, but you can cast your vote.
Yeah, no, I know, but
on the amendment, which isn't. You see what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
two separate things.
Well, the amendment is the status quo. The amendment is the system we have now. It's just to deal with a motion, we have to dispose of the amendment first, and the amendment is in our way unless I use a casting vote. Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
You'd be in the status quo
Yeah.
is valid at the substantial motion.
Yeah, I know, but I agree.
Yeah, so
To
you
get to
can-
the substantive motion, we have to
Yeah,
dispose
it's
of the
gonna fail.
amendment.
It fails.
It
I was going
fails.
back and forth.
Yeah,
It
it fails. So it just,
The amendment is lost.
yeah,
on
because
it.
I won't use a casting vote. Yeah. So, and the same thing could happen
so
the
in
next
theory-
part, yeah.
You're going, because you've made the decision, despite your very eloquent debate, that you would do a 180 if it was, because that's what's going to happen.
No. So now we're dealing with your motion first. So technically, we're 100% correct in terms of process, so the amendment, yep. So now, if it happens again, yes, then I will do the same. I won't use a casting vote.
And now
That will be the headline, I know.
No, that's fine. I'm not afraid of headlights. Headlines, headlines or headlights. I made it very clear to everyone. So let's go to the vote. So now this is the Wilson Donovan vote to move to FPP. Oh, screen's gone weird. All right.
I was going to ask if anyone knew wiser.
FPP. Yep. So I'm not using my casting vote, as I was very transparently indicated. So
The motion
status
is
quo,
lost.
So the status quo remains. Yes. All right. So let's well, look out. There might be a notice of motion coming. We're missing 2 members around the table. All right. So let's move on. Come on, team, let's move on. So item 10, page 293, recommendations from open committees. We just have one from the Finance and Monitoring Committee there as read. Thank you. Moved by the Chair of Finance, seconded by the Deputy Chair of Finance. All those in favour? There are none against. That's carried. I will move that we move into public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Van Osten. All those in favour? There are none against. That's carried. All right, we'll have a 2-minute break while we move.